That's just what they have in no items. This is the armor formula you can get off. Just Google like armor TFT, and then you'll get that formula. So then I want to look first at like no items, 100 AD versus 40 armor. So some examples of units that have 40 armor are Trundle and Yone. Um, Typically, the bigger a unit is, like the higher cost, and like bruisers, bodyguards have more armor. But yeah, so like Trundle's a bruiser and Yone is a 4 cost, so that's why like they kind of have the same. Um, so your total damage is your non-crit damage plus your non-crit chance plus crit damage times crit chance. Very simple so far. You guys follow? Very simple. So with no items again, it's 100 times 75, 75% chance to not crit, and then 25% of the time, that's 25 here. Can you guys see my mouse actually? You can, right? Okay, yeah. So wait, let me move my camera also. Okay, so obviously like 25% of the time you crit, then you do 130% easy, right? So on average, if you have 100 AD, on average you do 107.5 per auto. Post mitigation damage against 40 armor, against simple, use the formula. You put in 40 where it says armor right here. You get this much damage. So with Infinity Edge, it gives you 10 more AD, and yeah, I mean, okay, I'm not going to go that much in detail. You guys can see the numbers, but with Infinity Edge, you do 110, Last Whisper, you do 99. So this is not that surprising, obviously, right? Because it's not that surprising because Last Whisper against a 40 armor unit should not be as good as Infinity Edge. Last Whisper is good against high armor targets. So, like, duh, right? Infinity Edge is more. Last Whisper also gives attack speed, buffs your team. It's only 35% chance to proc without additional crit. That's something a lot of people overlook. If you don't have any extra crit, it's usually like it only procs on average one every 3 autos. So there's a pretty high chance that it's not going to proc like if you auto like 4 or 5 times. And then more factors. And yeah, this is the most complicated one. I don't know why I started with this, but it's fine. So here's some other ones. Infinity Edge versus 2-star Deathblade versus Giant Slayer. I'm not going to go into all the details. You can just look at it. But basically, I'll just summarize like the information on the slide. Um, so for Yone, you can see that Deathblade does a little bit more. Um, Giant Slayer does a little bit less, but on a activated target it does more. So that's not surprising. Again, this is what we would expect. One thing to note, I'll talk about this more next slide, is that Infinity Edge amplifies damage from Academy. So if you have Academy, Infinity Edge buffs that Academy damage, but Deathblade doesn't. So Infinity Edge could be better, but on the same time, Infinity Edge is really bad at that Bramble Vest, so it's a trade-off. Either way, like you're usually not going to be able to greed perfect item. Like if you're in a situation where it's like you have a sword and you can take either a glove or a sword, then yeah, obviously you can pick and choose in that case. But normally that's not going to be the case, and you just make whatever you can. And you can see for the assassins, Infinity Edge is better than Deathblade. This is for auto attacks, and that's not surprising, right? Infinity Edge synergizes with assassins. Everyone knows this. Um, so yeah, let's talk about all the important stuff. Last Whisper. So if you have Infinity Edge, if you already have Last Whisper, Infinity Edge makes it more likely to proc, which is really important. Let's say you're thinking about building Last Whisper. Vi, Jace, Victor, weak spot, Samira. So Vi, Jace, and Victor all shred armor. So Last Whisper, it's not valueless, but it's less valuable if you have these. Vi and Jace shred 50%, I think, and Last Whisper is 70%. So even if you have them, it still shreds more. And obviously, like I said about proc rate, Vi and Jace, like they're not always gonna have their debuff on the target you're attacking. Victor's 70%, but again, he's not always going to have his debuff on the target you're attacking. He might die, whatever. So this is usually Chemtech comp. So Last Whisper is a little less valuable in Chemtech, but it's still good. Weak Spot makes Last Whisper a little less valuable because it's just you're reducing so much of their armor already. Reducing a little bit more is not as important. Samira has a positive interaction with Last Whisper. She reduces flat armor, which is more important the less armor they have. And this is just easy to think about if you like just to conceptualize it, you can think about the extremes. Like if you reduce someone that has 1,000 armor to 990, it doesn't really matter. But if you reduce someone who has 20 armor to 10, that's a big deal. Like minus 10 armor. Oh, by the way, weak spot stack. Last Whisper reduces their armor, and weak spot ignores armor. So they stack pretty well, but they're still not good. So Last Whisper is worse with the first four, but better with Samira. Enemy board, obviously, like if they have Bramble Vesh, you'll want Infinity Edge. Enemy board in general, like if they have a lot of bodyguards, it makes Last Whisper better because Last Whisper is good against high damage, high armor targets. I feel like that's pretty straightforward, right? Does armor pen go negative? Yeah, Samira can reduce their armor to negative, I think. But yeah, like obviously Last Whisper is better the more armor the enemy team has. Giant Slayer enabled is another consideration, like if you want to build Giant Slayer. And just to quiz you guys in chat, which one of these following units does Giant Slayer work on? With no assume no items on any of them. Obviously, like if any of these units have like a Warmogs, it's probably gonna work, right? What do you guys think? Any guessers? Who do you think Giant Slayer works on? Okay, 3 people said Zac. It's kind of interesting. You guys think the 2-star Zac with 2 bruisers has the most HP out of all these units? Someone said Galio, someone said all of them, someone said Jace, Kench, Jason, Zac. Not Leona too? Okay, I still haven't seen the right answer yet. Galio? No, it's not Galio. Yeah, I still haven't seen the right answer, but I think a lot of people really overestimate Giant Slayer because without any items, alright, Everly CL and RadX1, RadXT1, you guys got the right answer. None of them. A lot of people overestimate Giant Slayer because with no items, Giant Slayer does not work on any of these things. Like 1-star Kench, 6 Bruiser. Like, yeah, Giant Slayer doesn't work on any of these. So I think a lot of people overvalue it. Um, so just keep that in mind when you're thinking about building Giant Slayer. It almost works on a lot of these units. So like for example, if like the Jace has like even like a trap call on it, for example, then it'll work. Okay, ultimate scaling. Um, so certain units, like for example Fiora. Let me just see if I can pull this up. Fiora TFT. So like for Fiora, for example, does 170% of her ADS physical, but she also does some true damage, and the Giant Slayer will amplify the true damage. However, because this 170% is amplified by plus 70%, whereas like a Giant Slayer is only 20%. Let's say Fiora 2 is only 20% more of this. So Giant Slayer is only 20%, assuming it's not active on the so it's only plus 20 true damage, whereas like Deathblade is 75 times 70%, and that's about 50. Obviously 50 AD compared to 20 true damage, it could be worse, but typically like yeah, it just depends what unit for ultimate scaling. But it'll be different for every champion, and this is a little too complicated for me to get into right now. But just know that every champion's ultimate is gonna scale a little differently. Oh yeah, 3 stars. Yeah, Giant Slayer works on a lot of the 3 stars, like cast in 3. Item components is another consideration because like let's say you can build best in slot, but then you're gonna have a worthless leftover item. It might be better just to build a slightly worse item and then have a second item that's good. I'm trying to think of an example of this. Let's say you're debating, like you have a Yone and you're debating between building like a Last Whisper. Okay, let me think here. I didn't I didn't prepare this part of the presentation. Let's say you have a bow, glove. All right, you know what? You guys are smart enough to figure it out. And then the other thing is team synergies. So this is kind of like what I was saying with the Infinity Edge and the Deathblade, where it's like for a naked Yone 2, Deathblade does more damage. But if you have like, let's say you have 6 Academy, obviously Infinity Edge does more, because that 6 Academy is gonna give you let's just pull this up real fast, right? 6 Academy is gonna give you 50 AD plus like this much more. So let's just say it gives you 100 AD. Infinity Edge is gonna make that 100 AD crit, whereas Deathblade doesn't affect it at all. So that's the other thing to consider. All right, I'm gonna move on to armor next, but if there's any questions about the damage, let me get to that first. Yeah, sometimes you're left with a good BIS and then Sunfire when you already have Morello. That's a good example. Let's say you have, yeah, so let's say you have these items and you're playing challengers, and you already have a Morello. I mean, you can make Last Whisper Yone, but then you're left with a Sunfire. That kind of sucks. Instead, you can just make Titans and then Trap Claw, which is really good on Yone. If you don't have QSS, there are definitely situations where like you would just go Titan's Trap Claw, even though Last Whisper is a better Yone item, just because like two items is better than one item. Last Whisper is a bad 2-1 slam. No, not necessarily. I'll get to that later. Also, when I talk about why I always make Shroud on stage 2 as well, because even if it's a little bit worse, like again, let's go to the start here. It does a little bit less against an unarmored target, but it also gives you 10% attack speed and buffs your team damage. So early on, like buffing your entire team is really important because all the units do about the same amount of damage. And I think it's more important because whatever item you make, you're gonna have it the whole game. So even if it's a little bit weaker earlier, I think it's still good to make. If I started the game with sword, glove, bow, I would always make Last Whisper in pretty much every situation I can think of, unless I have like a Shaco, then I might go Infinity Edge or a Talon, because like we said, team synergies, assassins are good with Infinity Edge. All right, let's go to armor. So again, I was motivated to make this because people kept asking me why I make Shroud on 2-1, and the general gist of it is Shroud is just like a really good defensive item because I always put it on my front line. You can't Shroud as effectively because I usually just leave it in the middle hex. Um, but let's look at this top example. Tarek attacked by 3 attackers. This is basically best case scenario for like Gargoyle and Bramble because it's like a very low armor target. And you can see Shroud's 24% DR, Gargoyle's 32%, and Bramble's 41%. Um, the math is, I'm pretty sure it's correct, but let me know if there's any questions. Assume we have, so then, but like later on, let's say we have 2 bodyguard Braum with 4 attackers, and like all the AD heavy comms have Last Whisper. You can see that Shroud is actually more damage reduction than Gargoyle, and it's the same as Bramble. This is purely physical damage mitigation, by the way. Shroud also has the best effect out of all these items, obviously. Like Gargoyle gives you magic resist. Bramble's damage is really good early, but it's not that good late game. I roasted Setsuko for making I instead of Last Whisper on Shaco. Uh, I remember I roasted him for making. Did he have a Shaco? All right, whatever, it's fine. Uh, I vaguely remember that, but yeah. All right. I don't think he had a Shaco. That's the thing. Cause Googleums likes playing like or not Googleums. What's up, Googleums? Because Setsuko likes playing Yone and Urgot much more than Assassins. Okay, either way. So we can see like this isn't even anything that crazy, right? Like a Braum with 2 bodyguard and Syndicate, that's not that insane. And we can see for that, Shroud is already more damage reduction than Gargoyle. I'm not even talking about, and the more armor items you have, like let's say you have Bramble plus Gargoyle, that is way less than Bramble plus Shroud in terms of mitigation. And again, I'm not even talking like really crazy cases like 4 bodyguard, etc., 7 syndicate. Yeah, the reason I'm doing this video is for YouTube because I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm missing dodge in the Shroud damage calculation. This is a 0.85. Because Shroud is 15% dodge, so they basically hit you 85% of the time. So you take the amount of damage you would take, and then you get hit 85% of the time. Conclusion is always build Shroud. No, not necessarily. I think Shroud is undervalued as a tank item, but the conclusion is definitely not always build Shroud. So let's just look at Gargoyle's first Warmogs real quick. By the way, I didn't look at Frozen Heart or Redemption. It's just a little. I mean, if you guys want to do it, I'm not gonna do it, but if y'all want to, you can. Hopefully, you should know how to by using this as a baseline. Um, so again, I just 2-star 2 bodyguard Blitzcrank, like pretty simple, right? Gargoyles is 133% effective. Warmog's 185. That's not that surprising because Warmog's basically doubles his HP. He already has a lot of armor because his bodyguard Blitzcrank. So Gargoyles is not as good. Like you want to think of it as like, let's say you have 10 points of unit stats. Like if you have all armor, like you have 9 times 1, like 9 armor and 1 HP, 9 times 1. That's not as good as having half and half, which is 5 times 5. So like that's just like the basic concept. You want like a mixture of everything. And the Scion's the opposite, right? The Scion's very low armor, but he has a lot of HP, so we can see that the Gargoyles is better on him. Because yeah, again, 5 times 5 is better than 9 times 1 is like the way to think about this. Other considerations, healing. So healing is better with mitigation, because let's say I have mitigation and my Seraphine. Let's say I have like 30% damage reduction and my Seraphine heals. It's basically 30% more healing because then that health that got healed. Yeah, I mean, this seems pretty straightforward to me. You guys get it, right? But then the additional effects. This is why I think Shroud is the best item to make because it's by far the best late game. Bramble's the best early game, but I don't think that's that important. Like early game, you generally it might make the difference between like winning like +2 or -2 HP, whereas late game it could be like +15 or -15 HP, or -15 HP or 0 rather. So yeah, this is why I think Shroud is the best. With Gargoyle, I just listed all the main AP carries that people usually play, and this is why I think Gargoyle is kind of bad because the magic resist I think is kind of wasted. Because let's just look at these in order. Talon, your Gargoyle unit is probably going to be the last unit to die, so it doesn't matter. Katarina, same thing. Seraphine, like she literally hits your whole team. Who cares if your tank has a lot of magic resist? It literally does nothing. Same with Lux, Victor, Kaisa, Akali. Same thing with all these units. Heimer and Mouse, these are the only 2 units that have to go through your tank. Um, so it's good against these two. But Malzahar even shreds the MR, so it even loses value against Malzahar. So it's kind of good against Heimer, but not really good against anything else. Maybe it's different in 6.5. We'll see. Socialite Hex is always a consideration as well because, I mean, Shroud. Like, if the Socialite Hex is in, like, the God spot, which is, like, back row, not in the corner, but next to it, you're going to see a lot of people using it. And then Shroud goes up in value because you can just leave your Shroud on it. Um, TFT is a lot of 5 times 5 is better than 9 times 1, yeah. Would I slam Shroud if I had just Vest and Glove? I mean, usually. If I had Vest, Glove, and Sword, it depends what comp I'm playing, but let's say I had like a Vex. I'm always making a Shroud there. Because the Sword I want to be a Shojin. I don't want an Infinity Edge in an AP comp. And GA is like, again, not that good in Arcanist comp. Let's say I had like Vex and an Arcanist Augment. The theme of this presentation is just to show some of the different math behind the items because I think a lot of people are undervaluing the defensive stats of Shroud, and I think a lot of people are overvaluing Giant Slayer because a lot of people look at someone's board and they're like, oh, they have like a Leona 2, I'm gonna make Giant Slayer, but it's like it doesn't even work on the Leona 2. Um, item components is always a factor. Like if you have an item you really need, then it might be worth it to make a subpar item. And we talked about this in the AD section. It's better to make 2 good items than like 1 perfect item and 1 really shitty item. Imagine doing math when you can blindly follow Reddit. That's the whole point of this presentation actually, is so it can go on Reddit and you can blindly follow it instead of doing the math yourself. Because I know a lot of people don't know how to do math. Um, my my wife was saying maybe I should start by explaining how to do addition. But yeah, I think you guys know how to do addition, but I'm not really sure. Chances are, right? Oh, AD ultimates. So this is my final point because I think this is by far the most important reason that Shroud is better than these other items. Because let's say it's like a Jin. Let's just look at some of these Jin TFT. Right, like the 4 shots guarantees a crit, and then and then as an execute for 44% more damage. All these other items are just going to reduce it by the same amount. They're just going to reduce it by the same amount of armor. But like the fact that you can dodge like these executes and stuff with Shroud, I think is just like really important. I'm not sure if you can dodge Fiora's true damage or not. Like I don't actually know. Um, but yeah, I feel like the dodge, being able to dodge like 80 ultimates. Actually, let's just look like TFT. Let's just look at a list of champions real fast and see who this matters against. Yeah, like you can dodge Ezreal ult, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you can dodge Gangplank ult. So basically you're dodging like all this bonus damage. I guess it doesn't really matter that much, because if you mitigate, it's a save, right? So, thoughts on ZZ Rot? Again, ZZ Rot and stuff is a little too complicated to... Well, I mean, it's not complicated. It's actually really simple, but I don't want this presentation to last forever. Do I offer master's degrees? Yeah, after you guys listen to this whole thing, you guys will all have bachelor's degrees, and then I'll have another presentation later, and then you guys will have master's degrees if you listen to that. Um, Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the dodging is better against AD ultimates. Now that I think about it. Okay, it's definitely better against this, right? Because you can dodge the armor reduction. So Shroud is definitely the best against Samira, for sure. Like, no question there. Oh, another unit is Talon, right? Like these, like, oh, what the fuck? Okay. Um, because where's my where's my talent? Okay, you know what? Okay, you guys know what talent does. I don't need to pull it up. Because like obviously Gargoyle's magic resist, but like you can dodge his entire ultimate if you dodge the auto attack. That's probably gonna give you more mitigation than Gargoyle. Dodging is irrelevant except in fringe cases. Yeah, I think dodging is irrelevant, but I think it does matter. It's better against Samira and Talon for sure. But yeah, I think on average it mitigates the same amount of damage. Like compared to like if you're looking at a Jhin ult or a Gangplank ult, I think on average it mitigates the exact same amount of damage. Yeah, what's up, Socks? By the way, Socks' PowerPoints inspired me to make a PowerPoint. So yeah, if you want to get your PhD, you have to get it from Professor Socks. Jhin shoots 4 shots and you'll dodge one of them about half the time. Yeah. Again, I'm just talking about like average mitigation. Dodge is good, just high roll and dodge every attack. These are some real good strategies in chat. Um, but yeah, basically, I think we'll probably wrap this up here. Unless anyone has any closing thoughts in the chat. That's pretty much all I want to talk about. Basically, I think the main points are I think people are really undervaluing the physical mitigation of Shroud. Like again, even on like a pretty modest 2 bodyguard syndicate Braum, like that's not that crazy with only one item. Shroud is already more being attacked 4 attackers with last whisper is already more mitigation than Gargoyle and like tied with the Bramble. And you can definitely get more extreme cases for sure that push it even more in Shroud's favor. But yeah, I think we'll probably wrap this up here. Um, so yeah, thanks for watching the stream. Let's go play some more. Let's play some more games.